can see your presentation well.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. Thanks very much, Pierre. I'm really enjoying these discussions and presentations. There's a lovely coherence, and I think the importance of data is very clear, the importance of it being kept and increasingly made more open. And it was mentioned earlier that this isn't always on our radar in wider discourses, so I think it's a very important what you're doing. So congratulations for that. I want to talk about, as you say, three things. You know, where we get our data from. Firstly, how we turn it into knowledge, and then how do we use that knowledge to underpin climate mitigation. There's a particular focus on policy, and I was struck by Minister Smyth's words about the like when we look at climate mitigation, there's a focus on the four topics, correctly as he said, the agriculture, and then I'm not going to talk about agriculture, but I will talk about the other three: transport, electricity, and heat. And then, of course, as we've just seen from Gavin, there's also the LULUCF dimension to climate mitigation and climate change. So for those of you who don't know MaREI, we're the Science Foundation Ireland Research Centre for Energy, Climate and Marine. We have about 220 researchers in 13 research institutes and third level institutes across Ireland, working on topics associated with these three grand challenges you see here. So our focus is to do excellent research that has significant societal impact. And the impact that we measure relates to informing policy, supporting industry and empowering society. And that's where we're coming from. Now, there's many dimensions to our work, and Keith mentioned some of them earlier, our collaborations with MaREI on the Translate project, and also our colleague Pori Grind, who's doing work on the vulnerability of electricity poles and other infrastructure to climate change. I'm not going to talk about those dimensions. I'm going to talk about the work we do in energy systems modelling within MaREI to underpin climate mitigation policy decisions. And I'll start with saying that we couldn't do what we do currently without the open data that's made available to us. So we get the energy balances, energy flows from Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, electricity flows from EirGrid, gas flows from Gas Networks Ireland, a lot of information about emissions from the EPA. The Central Statistics Office is a huge resource to us in terms of information on population, the economy, etc. A number of government departments, the ESRI, and then internationally, the International Energy Agency and Eurostat. This is just a snapshot of the organizations that we rely on for our data. And it's, as I say, it's a critical underpinning to what we do. So what do we do with it? Well, we build energy systems models, and this gives you a flavour of what that means. So of course, there is the reality of how an energy system operates, and we look at a model structure that tries to characterise that and an appropriate mathematical description, which will depend on what it is we're trying to do with the model. We then need vast amounts of data on the bottom right, which is the critical ingredient. And what that allows us to do then is build these models to do scenario analysis. And with the results, we can cross-check those results with reality, and then develop a nice feedback loop where we will adjust the model structure, the mathematical description, or we will seek out new data as required. So that gives a sense of what we do with the data. And then what this enables us to do in terms of the knowledge we can generate with that analysis of the data is to get representations like this, where we look at, say, the energy flow in Ireland's energy system currently. So this would be from data from the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. But the representation of the data is very important. Veronique correctly made this point about in order to make the data impactful, it has to be accessible. And what we see here clearly on the left-hand side of this flow diagram is the dominance within our energy system on fossil fuels. oil, gas and coal. And the relatively low contribution we have at the moment, about 20 terawatt hours from renewable sources of energy. And we can also see on the right-hand side where this energy is used. So the dominance of transport is clear there. We have heat in residential sector, also in industry and commercial, and we also have electricity use in industry and the commercial sector. But with our energy system models, we can explore alternative futures for that energy system. And this is a piece of analysis we've recently done on the period to 2030, taking into account the government ambition to have 70% of our electricity from renewable sources. So you can see on the bottom, when we compare this with the previous configuration, you know, we no longer have 20 terawatt hours of renewable energy, it's closer to 50 now. And this is the kind of transition that we need to have going forward. There's also a reduction in energy, so energy efficiency, and the Minister mentioned retrofitting of homes, but also transition to electric vehicles. There's many other aspects of energy efficiency that are important within the energy system, and then changing the supply side. And we can also explore a longer term future where we look towards a net zero energy system in 2050, where now we have a much more significant contribution from renewable sources. It completely dominates, apart from a very small contribution from oil. And we see now emerging into the mix, some of the electricity is used to generate hydrogen for some of the hard to decarbonize sectors as well. So we can explore these energy possible futures with the modeling tools that we've developed, which are based on the availability of open data. And we can also then explore and shine a light, I suppose, on where some of the challenges are. So we have this significant ambition that Minister Smyth mentioned on retrofitting 500,000 homes. But we can use representations like this, configurations like this, to show how far off target we are. So it's great to have these targets, but we really need the effective and fair measures that the Minister mentioned to ensure that we can meet these targets. And this can shine a light on some of the challenges we face, if you like, or where we're heading now compared to where we want to be. The orange gives a representation of where we might be going. The blue gives a representation of where we want to be. We have a similar thing we can do on the transport side here in the case of electric vehicles, where we see the ambition, the nearly 1 million electric vehicles by 2030, including 840,000 cars, and this particular graphic focuses on the cars. And again, we see the ambition that we have here in orange and where our current trajectory takes us, which is in blue. So we can look at the big picture, and then we can go down to individual measures and parts within the energy system and explore what's required there. So how do we use this analysis then to inform policy? Well, in 2013, we produced the first low carbon energy roadmap for Ireland, and that gave confidence to the policy system to legislate for climate action in 2015. We also supported the government in negotiations with the European Union around targets for Ireland for 2030. And this was very important because the capacity that we have developed wasn't there when Ireland was negotiating around 2020 targets. And we quantified the cost associated with that, that lack of evidence to engage in that process of the order of 3.6 billion euros. So we can see that for a small investment, relatively small investment, we can offset significant costs. We also then worked with the government department to support them in their thinking around the white paper on energy. So not only on mitigation, but also on energy security and addressing energy poverty. And that fed into the Ireland's energy white paper in 2015. That analysis also underpinned some of the thinking with the Energy Research Strategy Group the following year. And then in 2017, arising from the climate legislation, there was a requirement to develop national mitigation plans. So we did further analysis to underpin the national mitigation plan ambitions. Now, since then, we've seen an increase in government ambition on climate action. And so we did analysis to give confidence, essentially, in order for the government to make that leap, if you like, in ambition, which was articulated initially in the Climate Action Plan in 2019, where effectively we were aiming for a 30% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. But more significantly, recently we did analysis around the time of the government formation talks, and the programme for government increased a more significant ambition of a 51% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 for Ireland, unprecedented internationally. We've also worked with DEEPR, who's the host of this event, on how we can integrate research or make use of research to inform policy decisions. And our analysis in 2017 was used by DEEPR in 2019 to develop a way of how do we value greenhouse gas emissions in the public spending code. So public expenditure has to take into account greenhouse gas emissions. But how? How can that be quantified? And our analysis was used to inform that. And more recently, then on the right-hand side, we've updated our analysis in light of government ambition, and currently we're supporting DEEPR in amending the public spending code. Another way in which our analysis is translated into sort of climate mitigation is through our collaboration with companies. And we can see here we supported ESB and did collaborative research with them that underpinned their Brighter Future strategy, which focuses on electrification of heat and transport and decarbonisation of electricity. We worked with Gas Networks Ireland, and they published their Vision 2050 last year, which targets a zero carbon or a carbon neutral gas network by 2050. And we also worked with IBEC in terms of their deliberations and thoughts about a roadmap for a sustainable Ireland in 2050 from a business perspective. And finally, we've been supporting local communities in climate action. A particular success in that regard is in the Dingle Peninsula. The Dingle Peninsula 2030 project is quite unique in an Irish context. And we've been supporting the community there both on community development and community engagement, but also on a numerical analysis and modelling to underpin some of their decision making. So we produced a baseline energy balance for the Dingle Peninsula, and that underpinned the Energy Master Plan that was published in February 2020. And on the right-hand side, then, we took that to the schools. We took that data to the schools. And there's a huge appetite from young people to grapple with data and use that data to try and help them make decisions or inform their decisions and thinking about climate action. There's great concern amongst secondary school students in particular about climate action. And we were able to use the information to support them in thinking that. And we're now, this was picked up by the Department of Education, and we're looking at trying to develop this as part of the maths junior cycle to tap into that interest in climate action and couple it with the need for our students to have an increased interest in mathematics. So that gives a very much a whistle-stop tour of some of the data we've used, how we've used that in building energy system models, and then the impact of those energy system models in underpinning policy decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brian. Well, you made a great summary at the end. Energy production and consumption, right, is incredible of priorities, right, from the decarbonization and perspective, and really, like you highlighted, I think, like the collaboration side of things, the reuse of data, the consumption of data. I have to say, the different data visualization that you showed struck me with regards to our path to our targets and to our objective. But like, if we don't have the data, we cannot see where we are, and this is critical, right? Thank you so much, Brian. Please stay with us, because in a few moments time we're going to have a panel conversation.